It gives us the opportunity to do additional projects, one of which a landscaping project down the 347. It'll go from Honeycutt Road to the north entries of town. This includes trees, landscaping, rock boulders, some little art deco. There'll be some lighted metal structures all the way down the median. When you pull into the north side of town, we're going to have an impressive monument right in the middle of the road.
Good evening. We're going to go ahead and call this May 23rd Planning and Zoning meeting to order with invocation by Commissioner Irving and Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Yocum. Please stand.
For what you have done, doing now, and will continue to do for us. Ask that you guide us, hearts, open minds, open ears, as we discuss the business of the city. Father, we especially just lift up to you, strife, especially those people in Buffalo and what they're dealing with. And try to remind all of us as citizens, no matter where we live, that we need to at all those issues, because this, ask this in your name. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner LaFall?
Here.
Commissioner Yocum?
Here.
Vice Chair Sharp?
Here.
Chair Huggins?
Here.
Commissioner Irving?
Here.
Commissioner Frank?
Here.
Commissioner Robertson? Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All righty, call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete your speaker card and submit to the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. The procedures to follow if you address the commission are: commission requests that you express your ideas in 5 minutes or less, refrain from any personal attacks or derogatory statements about any city employee, fellow citizen, or anyone else, whether in attendance or not. The chairman will limit discussion whenever she deems as such action appropriate to the proper conduct of a meeting. Now, I do have some speaker cards for 5.2 and 5.3, and I do have one speaker card from Marcy. Did you have a particular item that you wanted to speak to, or general? All right. Please understand that as a commission, we are not able to answer any questions because they are not agendized. But we'd be more than happy to hear you, and this would be the time to do that. We cannot answer any questions that it is not agendized.
Madam Chair, I think she's referencing 5.2 or 5.3.
Oh, is it 5.2?
Yeah.
She just said development ideas.
Yeah, the Rose is the developer.
Oh, Rose. I thought
Yeah.
she said roads.
Yes, yes.
Okay, 5.2.
5.2.
We will move you down to 5.2 then.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so anybody else would like to speak about anything other than what's on the agenda, please approach the podium, state your name, address for the records. Problem, ma'am. Thank you. 5.2 as well. Okay, so anybody seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the call to the public. Next item is minutes. I don't recall. Shaking her head no, there was no minutes, and we will put that aside then as well. All right, next item, 5.1, DRP 22-02, a request by David Bowen of BFH Group requesting review and approval of site plan, landscape, photometric, and elevation plans for proposed 318 townhome-style unit, multi-story, multi-family development on approximately 16.1 acres located at the southeast corner of Stonegate Road and Allen Stevens Parkway, which is just north of Maricopa Casa Grande Highway in the city of Maricopa. Discussion and action.
Chairwoman Huggins, Commissioners, good evening. We would like to request that item be continued to a further date, most likely the June 27th P&Z hearing.
All righty.
Madam Chair, I move
Madam Chair, if I might real quick, I believe you do have a speaker card for this item, if that,
Just going to go there. It was. So thank you. So we want to continue that. Is there, developers not ready for that yet?
Correct. Just missing a couple submittals, so we're not quite ready for that one yet.
All right, not a problem. But before we do motion and take action on that, I do want to address the speaker card. So if you still like to speak on that tonight, you're more than welcome to come up. If not, you can hold it until the next meeting when you can have your choice to speak at that point. So I'll call you up and you can let me know if you want to come up at this time. Brittany? Oh, sorry. Wrong pile. Dustin? You want to speak tonight or you want to wait until? Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Dustin Williams, 42115 West Arvada Court. Mostly just questions about the development that's going in, questions on access to Allen Stevens Road. Currently, from what I could understand, from what I saw online, I didn't see any access from Allen Stevens, which I'm definitely in favor of. As a citizen of Glen Wild, we pay a lot of money for our HOA there, and I guess one of my concerns with this development is this going to be a development where the lines are blurred and we're affected by the population growth as well as the green belts that we pay for and the swimming area that we pay for, that even though it's required for a key, that doesn't always get enforced. And even though we have cameras and different things like that. So just a couple concerns, questions on if there's going to be access to Allen Stevens Road and the greenery that's going to go around there. Will it be enough to distinct between the two neighborhoods? That's all.
Thank you. Okay, Robert, did you want to speak tonight? All righty, come on up, state your name and your address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Robert Klob at 41676 West Laramie Road. Probably need to speak tonight because I think I'm going to be traveling on the 27th, so I'd like to kind of get my comments into the record for tonight, and hopefully the applicant can continue to work on some of the challenges should the commission decide to. Chair Huggins, commissioners and staff, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Robert Klob and I live just outside the notification zone for this project on Laramie Road. I operate a residential design studio here in Maricopa and regularly present my designs to boards such as this on a regular basis. Furthermore, before I moved to Maricopa, I was a zoning commissioner for the city of Chandler for many years, and I am currently the Glen Wild Architectural Committee chairman. I'm not here speaking as a representative of the Glen Wild HOA, but as a concerned resident with substantial professional experience in this matter. I'd also like to preface by saying this presentation by saying I'm not opposed to multifamily projects. I have designed quite a few of them personally, and my wife and daughter manage 2 large communities in Chandler. I think they can be an asset to an area if done properly, but I also seen them cause issues when not done very well. I believe that a townhome development in this location is not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm glad it's being continued. I am going to read kind of what one of my concerns that we're faced with in going over this project. I would like to formally request it's being continued. Due to improper exhibit notifications on the city's website, there was no links to any of the documentation for any of this project, nor was there any staff reports listed. And as of 4 p.m. today, there was still no exhibits listed, not giving any of the residents ample time to review this project. So I'd request that staff make sure that those are back up on the website for the next hearing in a timely manner so anybody is able to comment on that. Since no documents were provided for the public review of this submittal, I went back and reviewed the conceptual design documents submitted in the zoning cases, GPA 2107 and ZON 2105, the staff report from April 25th agenda. Based on this, I have the following concerns. On the site plan, since this is the site plan and architectural review of this project. On the site plan does not conform to the new Maricopa multifamily design standards. There's no or very little articulation in the buildings and minimal offsets. There's no articulation or aesthetic appeal for the site layout. The roads are straight and parallel, establishing lack of creativity and lack of interest. Minimal and no articulation to the buildings will create a tunnel effect. There's substantial western exposure, less than ideal in our Arizona heat. The building should have articulating building heights and greater setbacks along Allen Stevens Parkway and Stonegate. Three-story structures create a lack of privacy north of Allen Stevens for the Glenwild residents. Site design interest is not on par with other developments in the area or some of the recently approved multifamily projects. There is a building noted on the site plan in the northwest corner, but there is no information on what that building is, what it looks like. There's no documentation on it. There's an area in the center that's near the playground equipment. It's big enough for another row of units. There's no design, no use concepts, nothing about that, what that area is going to be. A big challenge I have with multifamily developments, and as I mentioned before, my wife and daughter are both managers for communities, is lack of guest parking. The entire north section of this whole development has 0 guest parking. It's only resident parking, and the only guest parking would be at the southern end of this project. And I think that could be a major issue should someone have a birthday party or some type of event that we all do with our families. Primary entries, there's no turnaround zone before the gate to stop queuing onto Stonegate. If there's cars that are unable to go through the queue, if it's malfunctioning or if they don't have a key card, there's no hammerhead, there's no turnaround radius there. There is access through the drive at A+ Charter School. Is there a joint use agreement with the school? And is that going to cause additional queuing during traffic during student pickup and drop off? And will that gate only be an in-out option or just out? There's no landscape drawings to review or comment, but my concern is opportunity for vertical landscape like trees and tall shrubs and bushes are only at the end caps and will do nothing to break up the massing of the structures. There's not enough room between buildings for shade trees. Sidewalks run parallel to the buildings and do not articulate either. There's no photovoltaic and lighting plans to review or comment. Is there going to be phasing of this development? There is nothing regarding fencing, walls, gates, signage, their design, their specifications. 20 feet standard between buildings will feel very tight and congested. 24 feet back of curb, 22-foot clear drive aisles are very tight for mid-size and larger vehicles. Most Valley cities require a 26 minimum from face of curb. There appears to be a sidewalk along the garage side of the buildings, but the elevations show little wing walls that project out. Which is it? I'm concerned about the on-site retention being predominantly underground in such a small area separating the north border with single-family homes. During a high rainfall event combined with Maricopa's propensity for flooding issues in the past, this could create an overconcentration of rainwater in the area that could lead to potential unnecessary damage to the existing single-family homes in Glenwild. And the grading plans provided are not adequate to show pertinent info of the rainwater and or their volumes. The emergency vehicle turning radius shown appear to be tight and don't represent the needed capacity for a 90-degree turn without using extra space for the parking or between buildings in several locations. Now onto the building architecture. There are no floor plans to be able to tell actual building articulation and massing of sizes. 2 color palettes are shown. Which color scheme goes on which buildings is not noted. And there's no color call out for the hardy plank. There's a shade structure shown on the elevations between the buildings, but none shown on the site plan. It's very deceiving. The brown color scheme is what I'll call it, has the brown hardy board front on it. There are some steel awnings that show gray, but the standing seam awnings show that they're white or light gray, and there's no call out in the palette. And there's no design color material data for the quote custom steel shade structures. On the gray scheme, I believe it's too monotone. It needs some texture similar to the version with browns and grays. Why is there no siding on that? The rear elevation, the garage side, there's no articulation, there's no massing, and there's no variation in roof heights. The awnings appear to be light gray, but this color scheme shows as dark gray. The entry of that unit has a very deep tunnel design for the entry and does not follow our design standards or create an inviting entry. This also could be a safety concern at night. There's also two different gray concepts in the package. Don't know which one is which. Why do we need two gray concepts? The wing walls that are shown in the elevations I believe, are deceptive in how they appear on the elevations, and they're not really shown on the site plans. And due to how tight the drive aisles are, these could be a problem with larger vehicles entering and exiting garages. The shadows on the elevations are giving a false sense of depth and massing. My recommendation is the applicant provide a 3D model to show the commission and the community a complete street perspective of both parking and green space to properly demonstrate actual building massing and relationships. In my opinion, this project shows a complete maximizing of space to get every possible unit without the care of aesthetics, functionality, or residents or neighboring communities. I do have a couple questions for the applicant. Is this a development you will develop and manage and maintain, or do you plan on flipping this either before or during construction or soon thereafter? Regarding the management of this project, will there be an on-site manager during normal business hours, or will this be managed off-site? If and when there is a concern, who are the neighbors able to contact? In conclusion, I'd like this commission to either deny this application as previously submitted, or at the minimum, continue this item to give the community more time to review and comment on the design features, and also give the applicant more time to address the challenges I've noted above. And I'm happy to answer any questions on my long list of things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more. Yvette.
Can I respond to that one, or do you want me to wait till the end? Okay.
Sorry? Okay. Want to? Sure.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Klobb, who was just up here. I was nodding my head with a lot of his comments because during our review of the DRP, which is getting continued this evening, a lot of the issues that he noticed are the same that staff has noticed. So I just wanted to assure him and the commissioners and the public that are here that we are reviewing it very thoroughly, and we will take his comments into account as well, and will be addressed. And we apologize for the mix-up as to why the attachments aren't available online. I'm not sure what happened with that, but I'll be sure to look into that first thing in the morning to make sure that that's addressed. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, I have no other speaker card, so this is, staff is asking for, like, you guys are looking at me like big eyeballs.
Staff seeking a continuance of this.
Correct. Guys, like deer in the headlights. So would you like to restate? All right, would you like to restate?
we continue.
B2202.
Yeah. We continue it for a further meeting.
Awesome.
I think you got
Second.
Second, awesome, Commissioner, thank you. I do have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, so moved. All right. 5.2, GPA 21-08. This is a public hearing, a request by Greg Davis of Ipine Consultants on behalf of Rowers Companies to amend approximately 10 acres of the general plan future land use map from public institutional P to high-density residential HDR, located at the southwest corner of Porter Road and Iron Point Road, just south of Maricopa Casa Grande Highway. Discussion and action.
Thank you, Chair Huggins. So this is a public hearing request for GPA 21-08 and Zone 21-08. The general plan amendment to the future land map, we have existing public institutional, and the proposed change to the future land use map is to high-density residential. The zoning map amendment would be a change from the existing general business CB2 to proposed high-density residential. Now, you may notice already, which is what we're going to talk a little bit more about, but the existing public institutional doesn't really match with the existing general business. So that's one of the reasons why this proposal makes a lot of sense. So with that said, the site itself is approximately 10 acres. It's currently vacant, and the general plan, as I said, is high-density residential. The proposed zoning is also high-density residential. There is no overlay zoning. The applicant is requesting a 200 unit mix of 1, 2, 3 bedroom units, ranging from 850 to 1250 square feet. The proposed density would be 20 dwelling units per net acre, which is the allowed maximum for the high-density residential zoning. The parking will meet the requirements, considering the applicant adheres to the 20% Sustainable Development Incentive Program reduction, which will put the total number of spaces at 388, with that 20% reduction from the 485 required by code. So just to the north of the site, in blue, we do have a future school site that's planned. And in addition to that, as it was approved last year in major general plan amendment for single-family residential to the Kelly Farms project, that's planned to be built to the east. So as you get a feel for the area surrounding this site, you can see that we also have existing single-family residential Santa Rosa Springs to the west. In addition to that, I didn't highlight it, but directly south is a daycare facility that is currently being operated to the direct south adjacent of the site. So as we look at this site, we start to realize that the area that is currently zoned commercial is not a very good fit for this side of the railroad tracks. Not only do you have the school site, you have residential to the west, you have residential to the east, you have a daycare facility to the south. Staff feels that with the way that the north of Maricopa Casa Grande Highway is currently developing, which is a higher concentration of our mixed use, and a lot of our commercial development is happening to that on that side. And I have some more graphics that can show that a little bit further down the road. We just feel that this is not an adequate site to develop commercially, which is a good reason why we haven't seen it develop commercially to this point. And we also feel that the high-density residential product is going to create a better buffer between the two single-family residential uses and the school and the daycare facility. And we'll show further in our presentation that the transportation impacts are more suitable for this area based on the difficulty of crossing the railroad tracks and some of the things that are pertinent to this area, whereas a higher traffic count, a higher traffic use such as commercial would actually cause a lot of congestion if this were to develop as it is currently zoned as commercial. So the existing general plan is an outliner from a previous PAD development, and it shows that the all in blue is actually public institutional future land use. Well, that fits well for the school to the north. It doesn't really serve this particular parcel very well. So to the right is the proposed general plan designation of high-density residential outlined. In addition, the zoning is an outlier from that old PAD as well, and we have a CB2 old, which is our previous zoning code, left over from the county for commercial. And you'll see the daycare facility to the south is, obviously, it's a commercial use, so it fits that for the most part, but it's kind of a zoning island when it comes to this parcel that we're looking at right now, which has remained undeveloped. Sorry, I'm having some trouble there. So the applicant did follow all requirements that were set forth for this application, and it's from our city zoning code for public hearing, section 18.140.060. They did advertise for the public hearing meeting. It was published in the Maricopa Monitor and Casa Grande Dispatch. Notification letters were sent out to all property owners within 600 feet of the property, and the sign was advertised in the public as a public hearing meeting. It was posted on the property. A neighborhood meeting was held on May 5th at the Maricopa Library and Cultural Center with 16 citizens in attendance. At the time that the report was written, staff has not received any formal comments or emails regarding this request. And then just refer to the citizen participation report, which is Exhibit B, and for any further details about public comment. So I'm moving into the analysis section. This is where this kind of explains our thinking, how staff kind of approached when we review these types of developments, whether we're going to support or not support a development like this. And as a hot topic and something that should be a hot topic as we develop, traffic concerns are something that we look at. So this is the first thing that I wanted to talk about. So if you think about the difference between residential, multifamily residential, or single-family residential for that matter, and commercial, I think the big thing you think about is when cars are coming and going, and what are the peak number of cars that are leaving and coming to a property at any point. So this is from the traffic impact study, and it basically compares what the current zoning would allow for, which is that commercial zoning, and then compares to what the proposed change in zoning would actually end up with when it comes to traffic. So with the existing zoning, you're with a commercial zoning, let's say a commercial development went in there, an Ace Hardware or something like that, or a smaller version of a Walmart, for example. You could look at, you're going to be at about 226 morning peak hours traffic. Okay, so that's a lot of morning and more of extended morning traffic, because if you think about when you leave to go to work, most people leave in a certain window of time, and then they go to work for the day, and then they come home in a certain window of time. Well, with commercial developments, it doesn't quite work that way. You have a lot more of consistent traffic through the day, a lot more noise, a lot more odors, honking, whatever you want to call it, that comes with a commercial development. So you look at that, you look at the PM peak hours, and it's even more as you know, when a lot of us go do our commercial shopping after work. So the peak hours do go up more for the existing zoning. If it were commercial, you're looking at 678 PM peak hours in that circumstance, as opposed to a little more consistent 76 AM peak hours for a multifamily 200-unit development, and then 78 for the PM peak hours. So if you look at daily total trips with the existing zoning, you're looking at about 8,824 daily total trips versus about 908 with the proposed zoning, which is a difference of negative 7,916. So the proposal will actually reduce the amount of future traffic by almost 8,000 trips a day. Another thing we wanted to touch on is, why do we have so much multifamily that's coming in? Well, we had an adopted housing plan. As we know, it was adopted by City Council in 2018. And it consisted of online survey, in-person surveys, focus groups, stakeholder interviews, 5 workshops with Housing Committee, design charrette, which is a fancy word for a meeting with stakeholders, and then 4 separate presentations to City Council. And through that process, it was identified that the city definitely has a need for other housing products besides single family. So in specifically, 25% of the housing's inventory needs to be, as identified in this study, multifamily. So the city housing inventory of single-family units is about 70,400 entitled, with about 25,000 of those units constructed. So we have a lot more that are coming down the pipe that are already entitled that we will be seeing built in the near future. So the city housing inventory currently of multifamily entitlements is only 2,135 units, with 670 units of those complete. So with that said, the city housing need for multifamily making up 25% of its total housing inventory, we still need a total of 6,253 total family units. So with 600 and some change completed, you can do the math, that leaves a large amount of multifamily that we still need to fulfill that goal. So right now we have about 1,700 multifamily units in various stages of land use entitlement proceedings, including this application. So even with everything that we've seen coming through down the pipe, all these different projects we're talking about, we're still not even halfway to our goal to provide multifamily. And, you may ask, or the community members may ask, why do we need 25% multifamily? Well, the answer is that we have a greater need for affordable housing for those who maybe cannot afford to buy a home, especially with the current prices the way they are. So I'm not going to go through this completely line by line, but what it's basically showing you is different comparisons between 2020 and 2021 of communities in the valley, and it looks at what people can afford by occupation. So basically, starting off on the right side, you would have some lower wage workers, such as retail workers, wait person, construction worker, a teacher. And as you can see, in those communities, and I would say our community is right there, those people cannot afford to buy or even rent in those communities with what's currently offered to them. So this is one of the things that was looked at when the housing needs assessment was created. And so another question that comes up is, well, if we're taking away commercial land, then what do we have left for commercial? We don't want the whole city to be residential, which is a valid argument. I would like to start this by saying, number one, as you can see in the graphic, this site was not even planned for commercial in the general plan. So when we look at the general plan, we look at the existing land uses for the city. We create, these maps that show us where we want certain things to develop. So as you can see, this area wasn't pegged for commercial use in the first place. As you can kind of tell by looking at it, it's not a great spot for commercial, just because of the railroad tracks and the surrounding residential is just literally on either side of the parcel. So, but you can see in red, we do have some more commercial that's actually coming online, and we're replacing the commercial land in tenfold. So the one in yellow is a city-initiated commercial rezoning process, and then also, I'd like to point out just to the north of the site, across the railroad tracks, we have red, and then that light blue is mixed use. But we're seeing primary use in those mixed use as commercial right now. Okay. I just want to talk a little bit about the site plan. So this, we are once again talking about the rezone and the general plan future land map. In this hearing, the site plan, the DRP, Development Review Permit, is going to come back next month to be presented. So I'll have a lot more details when it comes to how the site looks and things like that. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on what the site looks like. As you can see, the site has a nice large entryway off of Porter Road. The parking is interior to the site, so it was important for staff that you don't see a bunch of parking lots when you drive by the development. It's a garden style. There's 8 residential buildings with 1 clubhouse. You know, it's a 10-acre development, so it's a smaller size. It does have a fitness center, swimming pool, sun deck, community room, turf areas, tot lot, picnic and grilling areas, and it does have a dog park. In addition, pedestrian circulation was very strong with this application and will be moving forward. There's lots of pathways throughout the community. There's a pedestrian gate that's going to be at the northeast section portion of the property that the people that live, the residents can come and go through that gate without having to walk down to the keypad area, the main entrance off of Porter Road. To access the commercial to the north across the railroad tracks. So the garages are situated in the southwest corner. The applicant did try to set the buildings back on the west side as far as possible from the existing residential community to the west. They can speak a little bit more, or I'll speak a little bit more about that. They will actually, about the neighborhood concerns and things of that nature that were brought up in conjunction with the buildings and the neighborhoods to the west. So just keep in mind, these are preliminary elevations. We haven't received the second round of DRP submittals yet. But as you can see, the colors are a little desert tone, but there is a good use of different materials on the buildings. You've got some stone, you've got some metal, you've got some concrete, lap board or hardy board or whatever you want to call it. There's a fair bit of articulation to the roof, although we would like to see a little bit more on the main buildings. We have some comments, but this is a good start, we believe. I think it's a fairly attractive product, and with the help of staff and some of the comments that we've given them, they've been receptive to creating a much more attractive product. But I think they did do a good job of with the beginning look of these buildings. Case in point, you can see how it's actually stepped down along Porter Road at the corner of the development. So the northeast corner is going to have that nice, it goes from 3 stories down to 2 stories, which breaks up the box kind of appearance of the buildings themselves. And you can see how the stone was applied to the entire corner there we're looking at the slide on the west side there. And so through our initial analysis, we look at the goals of the general plan, and we look at whether or not this application is going to meet those goals. So the first goal, B1.4, minimize conflicts between land uses. Staff feels like that this is a much better, meets that goal much better than the existing general plan designation of public institutional. We also feel that the next goal, the ensure the development of a diverse housing stock, is very important, and I'd say that's the main goal for this project speaks to. And it also creates a safe and functional pedestrian ways and bicycle routes as an alternative mode of travel through Maricopa. And then the housing needs assessment and plan, that's really what I spoke to earlier, and a main point of this is that we still need more diversity of housing stock for workforce housing, for lower to middle income groups to be able to afford to live here in Maricopa. So staff's findings are favorable in all the above considerations. Also, Zone 2108, it should say, not 05, that's my mistake. The amendment is consistent with the general plan. Any change in district boundaries is necessary to achieve the balance of land uses desired by the city, consistent with the general plan. I believe it is more consistent than the public institutional, which doesn't match with the existing commercial zoning. The amendment will also promote the growth of the city in an orderly manner and protect the public health, safety, peace, comfort, and general welfare. So, item 5.2, minor general plan amendment, we would like to recommend approval of that case, subject to the conditions of approval stated in the staff report and as amended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then item 5.3, staff, we also recommend approval of the zone map amendment request, Zone 21-08, subject to the conditions of approval stated in the staff report and as amended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Before we open the public hearing, I would like to bring the applicant up to talk about the neighborhood meeting and some of the neighborhood concerns that were heard and what the applicant has responded to those neighborhood concerns already to get out ahead of it a little bit. Yep.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Greg Davis with iPlan Consulting and appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Yeah, we did have a much longer presentation, but Byron, covered his bases and covered ours for him, so we thought it'd be a better idea just to come up here and speak to the issues that you might hear from some of the residents so we can have a good dialogue about that moving forward. Because at the neighborhood meeting that we did hold, we did hear from several residents, their concerns, multiple concerns, but the two that we worked most on in the few weeks that we've had is regarding traffic and issue of privacy. So I'm sure you all recognize me. I've been up here a few times in the last month talking about traffic, so hopefully these conversations are very familiar to them. This case differs a little bit in some of the other ones we've talked about that are north of the Maricopa Casa Grande Highway. Because you already have an existing significant traffic issue up there because of the schools. That's been well dialogued and discussed. But there's still traffic congestion down here because of the railroad tracks, because some of the roads in the area are underdeveloped, for the future land uses that we're talking about. And that's one of the things we tried to convey is that this project, is a multi-year project. It's not something we're going to be opening up and putting people in this year. It's going to take at least a year just to get through the approval process and start construction. And while that's going on, there's a lot of different elements that the city's working on as well. And so they all kind of dovetail together, hopefully without much inconvenience to the residents long term. But one of the difference that our project is that I think at least some of the neighbors that I talked to after the meeting were that this project doesn't serve people that commute to Phoenix. A lot of the concern that we hear is about traffic congestion going north on Porter, getting on 347 heading to Phoenix, and that's not who this serves. This project is meant to serve people that live in Maricopa that can't afford to rent a house or buy a house. It is talking about our teachers, our first responders. We have the Pinell County Community College right up there, and the last one on that list I have there is the regional industrial workers. And that's something that we've talked about just a little bit, but in Casa Grande, just northwest of Casa Grande along the Gila Bend Highway, there's quite a bit of industrial development going on. We've represented several hundred acres that's coming online. And so there is a buildup of demand in that area along Highway 8, as well as in the future of Maricopa for industrial development. And there isn't really any place for those workers to live. So this product and Rohr's companies really specializes in that workforce housing. Different from the Home at Maricopa project that you saw, which may be more of a luxury, if you will, type of end product. and different from the other projects that have been approved that are government subsidized. This isn't either of those. This is kind of in the middle, and it's more of an attainable housing product that's being proposed, and it's being proposed specifically for these types of residents. And when you look at where these residents work, and that's the whole point of this slide up here, is you can see that it's not all just going north on Porter. There's some that go north on Porter, there's some that get on the Maricopa Casa Grande Highway, but a large majority of the traffic that we see are going to be using the east-west parkway, which is going to start construction in June, and it's supposed to be finished within a year. We'll give them a year and a half because it's, you know, budgetary reasons, but we expect that to be in place by the time this project opens, and we expect that to help not only diversify our traffic, but also help distribute the traffic that's already being generated by the single-family homes and the neighborhoods in that area. Let's see if I can get this to go. Yeah, it's a little touchy, I remember. So, you know, as part of those overall projects that are going on in the city, we did speak to the Assistant Deputy Manager about some of the future infrastructure projects that are either ongoing now or in the future, just so we can share that information with some of the residents as well as yourselves. Obviously, 347 is a big one. This is not correct. Okay, so our little oblique red mark is supposed to be up a little bit to the northeast, but when we transferred the slide, it didn't work. But 347 widening is obviously a major project, one that I'm not going to discuss much here, but is one that's important to everyone in the city. The Porter Road widening project, which is currently under construction, the Maricopa Casa Grande Highway has some median work being done right in front of here. It's already 4 lanes in front of this project in this area where the commercial is, so that'll help service the area. And as I just talked about, the east-west highway, which runs just south of our site. So our site accesses directly onto Porter Road. If you turn right about a quarter mile down, that's where Farrell is, the Farrell alignment, and that is where the east-west parkway is going to be. So this has excellent access to that parkway. And that parkway connects all the way over to John Wayne Parkway as well. So where you have a new medical center, you have Copper Sky, you have the casino, you have a lot of development happening in that area that this project may serve for its residents. When we also talked about what is our requirements for improvements. Today, most of the residents see the conditions that exist today, not what's going to exist when we build the project. And so we tried to convey that the city will go through our plan, and they actually will stipulate us to several conditions that require us to examine the traffic. They look at our examination, and then they make recommendations of improvements that need to be made. So the point of this slide is just simply to show that the city is reviewing our plans, and they are holding developers to developing infrastructure as needed, where needed, to mitigate traffic created by projects. This project in particular, Porter Road right now, is, you know, a 2-lane road, no improvements at all. So we'll be required to put in Porter Road along all our frontage through the intersection with Iron Point Drive, and then there is an access on Iron Point as well. So any improvements that need to be made on Iron Point will also be required as part of this project. Okay, now let's talk about the privacy issue. So we do share our west boundary with an existing single family home neighborhood, many of which I expect are here tonight. And, you know, Rowers has done projects all across the country. Most of their projects do share boundaries with existing single family. So when they come into that situation, they know that privacy is an issue. And so one of the things that they do initially to help mitigate that concern is move the buildings away from the shared boundary. So even though we have a setback of 20 feet along that boundary, we're actually about 85 to 95 feet pushed away from that for that reason alone. And then we also use the parking area and the drive aisle and garages in this case for part of it, as well as the landscaping as a buffer. So we're trying to put things in between our buildings and the existing property line to help create that separation, that buffer, that helps ensure noise mitigation as well as visual mitigation. Okay, so we specifically wanted to use the garages along the boundary for this case. We do have single-story garage, and they follow the same architectural style, so they have a raised parapet roof. And that allows us to go a little higher than you typically see on a garage, which can help cut the line of sight diagram, which I'll show you in just a minute, to help block some of those views in the property. So along the south half of that property there, you can see the garages that are identified in red. The property jogs to the east, just north of that, and so we didn't have room to put them all the way along that boundary. And where we don't put them, we did commit to the residents that we would be putting in a double row of trees instead of the one that's just shown there. That would be a minimum 24-inch box size so that they can have some reliance that we're doing something on our side to help those issues. Now, the residents, of course, can plant trees in their backyard too to help any specific issues, but we understand that, it's our job to help mitigate that concern, and that's what we've proposed to date. And we did prepare a line of sight diagram, which should be next. Maybe. That's the trees. There we go. Fourth time's the charm. All right, so this is an exhibit that shows a line of sight, and we did send this to several of the neighbors that provided their email address, so they've had a few days to look at this. But basically, the left is the single-family home, the shared boundary, and then you can see in black and white is the apartment building with a person standing in it. So the top line of sight diagram is showing where the garage is. And so we can show that where the garage intersects the line of sight, it basically doesn't allow any visibility into the rear yard or rear back of the home. And where we don't have the garages, that's where we'd propose the additional landscaping to provide that same effect. Those details obviously can be conditioned as part of the DRP. We'll of course have them on our plans because we're here telling you we will. But that is the approach that we're taking to help address that concern. And so the RERS team, a couple things I want to say about them is that they develop and they manage their own buildings. They don't flip the buildings to someone else. So they have a long-term vested interest in the property to not only build it correctly, but manage it correctly as well. Because the management of a facility like this can make a night or day difference. And they have a track record of showing that that's how they manage all their buildings throughout the country. So they're here to speak tonight if you'd have any questions for them, and I'd be glad to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you. Okay, I think at this point we will go ahead and open up the public hearings. Have some speaker cards, so we'll start off with Brittany. State your name and address for the record.
Brittany Pizzola, 41160 West Somerset Drive. So first off, the change from the public institution to high density. So in the zoning it says public institutional. This district is for public or quasi-public facilities, including but not limited to city facilities, utilities, schools, health services, public works yards, utility stations, telecommunications facilities, and similar uses. Accessory retail uses and services, including food facilities and childcare, are permitted. So I've lived in Maricopa 8 years. I lived in Rancho Mirage for 6 of those 8 years. It takes me 15 to 20 minutes to get from Rancho Mirage, Tortosa, Sorrento, all the way out to Copper Sky, where all of the community activities and such are held. If it was still public institutional, there could be another facility like Copper Sky so that we wouldn't have to drive as far for soccer practice or for basketball practice or for any of the other activities that the city provides at Copper Sky, which we enjoy doing. But it takes so long to get there that an hour activity takes 2 hours, plus all the traffic that's going there. So if there was still public institutional, they could put another city facility for youth activities and maybe another swim pool, because we've already outgrown ours. There could be various things here that we could use for youth and for community activities in this area, and it'd be in a great location, easy accessible to those people on the east side of Maricopa that have to drive so far. Also, the general business area says it's for a 1 to 5 mile radius for small services like animal care, building materials, storage, rental, automobile servicing, those sorts of things. There is nothing close to the people on the east side of Maricopa. It takes, once again, 15 to 20 minutes to drive to John Wayne Parkway, to go to the UPS building, or to go to the vet, or to go to an auto mechanic. That little area around the daycare would be a great place for those types of businesses, because they're small businesses. They're not that crowded like Walmart per se, so it wouldn't be bringing in as much traffic. I personally like how it's zoned right now. If I am a parent, I would not send my kid to a daycare right next to an apartment building. That makes me very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable to have an apartment building right next to a daycare facility. Also, once again, the traffic. I think before we concentrate all of these buildings in the same area, we need to look at the traffic. We need some different traffic signs. We need some police. The police need to be working on ticketing those that are doing things like illegal turns. I was almost hit again walking my children to school by a person turning left illegally from a school. I understand the need for apartments. I used to be an apartment dweller. I was a teacher as well. I don't know where those numbers are coming from, but I don't know any teacher that makes that much money, $52,000 to $47,000. I made $32,000 as a teacher working here in Maricopa. So I'm not sure where those numbers are coming from, but they do not represent Maricopa salaries. And I get that we need apartments, but they don't all need to be right here on this side of town. What about the teachers that are working out in Tortosa? What about the teachers that are working out by Copper Sky? Okay, they have to drive. Why don't we have both of our current hospital and our other hospital is going to be out over there by Copper Sky? Why don't we have more apartment buildings over there? Why don't we have more apartment buildings out by Santa Cruz and Desert Wind and the new high school? There should be apartments out there too, but I don't see any planning for that. I think that they need to be spread out more and not all concentrated in one area. It just doesn't make sense to me to make this the apartment area with a few little ones spread out here. It should be spread out all over Maricopa to make Maricopa more diverse. I just hope that these things can be taken into consideration, and that the safety issues, the speed limit, more police presence on Porter Road, school zonings and crosswalk signs, these things need to be addressed before more apartments come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker card, Sue Van Gossen. State your name and address for the records, please.
Sue Van Gosen, 41452 West Lucera Lane. And I want to address the safety concern with the railroad tracks there. The traffic coming from Santa Rosa is already in a bind coming out of there. They are backed up at that traffic. There may be 4 lanes right there at the light, but back there where this proposed development is, it is not 4 lanes. It is only 2. And the traffic that goes through there already backs up to where there are people waiting on both sides of that railroad track. One of these days, there's going to be a mass casualty event there at that railroad track. And having this apartment complex there, proposing bike routes and pedestrian routes to get them across to the shopping or the restaurants, you're just looking for an accident, a serious accident there. This is not the place to be putting high-density residential. Also, the traffic counts may have been for just that high-density area, but they're not counting the people coming out of Santa Rosa already. I mean, that is a large subdivision and still growing. And the traffic coming out of there would have more than doubled whatever he had up there. Also, someone mentioned that the corner there would be a school. No, because of all the backups that we see with the other school zones, no school zone should be there. A park or something, but not a school. There are too many people waiting in line now to drop their kids off and to pick them up in the afternoon. If you put a school there, you are going to ask for trouble because there'll be someone hit. That railroad track, until you get an overpass over that, which I don't see the east-west corridor addressing an overpass over the railroad track. It shows that there'll be a bridge over the low water area to get to Farrell Road, then Farrell Road will be a parkway. But there will have to be another overpass over the railroad tracks that has a pedestrian crosswalk with it. And that would be where your bike path and your pedestrian crosswalk would have to be. You can't have them crossing the railroad track. That makes me scared. Also, concerning the industry that is being built out in Casa Grande, yes, there is industry being built out there, but the Maricopa Casa Grande Highway is currently only 2-lane and a low speed limit. And there is no apparent way to widen that to 4 lanes because of the different individual wash areas that are across there, especially the one just as you get into the city limits of Casa Grande. There is one there that would be quite expensive to put a bridge across. Also, I was just going to address the point of all of the apartments being here in this one area. That will bring not just the apartment traffic here, but everyone that works somewhere else in the city would be traffic coming into this area. Instead of shopping on John Wayne Parkway, they would be coming over here to shop just before getting home. So that the traffic counts are just way off. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next one, Ben North. State your name and address for the record.
Ben North, 41670 West CeeLo Lane. I'm here as just a concerned citizen. First time I've been here. I live in Glenwild. I've noticed a lot of these apartment complexes popping up just right around Walmart, it seems like. And I agree with the other speakers. They should be spread out. I do agree 25% when the city is fully grown should be for low income. My worry is that area, and she's already spoke about it, right next to the train tracks. We have kids playing in that area. It's, the housing over there is kind of away, but I do believe the apartment complex is just way too close. Traffic is going to be very bad. Someone's going to get stopped on the railroad tracks trying to get to somewhere because it's already backed up. And I do agree there's going to be an accident eventually if it gets too built up over there. That's all I really have. I just hope you take it in consideration about so many apartments in one area.
Thank you. All right, Joanne Miller. And please state your name and address.
My name is Joanne Miller. I live at 17212 North Rosa Drive in Santa Rosa Springs. For years, we have listened to this supposed bridge over the wash on Porter. We've been promised that, I'm going on 14 years now, for 14 years. The first one, it was diverted because the impact fees went to build the bridge over Honeycutt. Needed, necessary, fine, the housing boom went, and so that was okay. But they never took it back up again. We have literally one entrance to Santa Rosa Springs. You can only go in and come out on the same drive, which is illegal. And I've spoken to many city councils members over the years, and they keep saying, well, you've got two. Well, no, the one, it comes in where the school is, right off of the railroad tracks, and then the one on Iron Point. The one off the railroad tracks isn't even an entrance. It's gate. I mean, there's a lock on it. and you just come into the same area that you come into. So that's a problem. We went from 120 homes to 575 homes. You figure two cars per house, that's a heck of a lot of people coming in and out. If they don't work in town, they've got to get out of town. I have literally had to wait 20, 25 minutes to get into the neighborhood. When the wash is running, which it did last year for 2 solid weeks, you couldn't use that one. If there is no bridge, and I know they keep promising there's a bridge, but there isn't right now. There's on Iron Point, when it goes around, it's supposed to, where Hovian Homes is being built, they're building a road through the wash, which we were also promised that would never happen again in Maricopa. They would never build a road through the wash, because that's just, when it floods, it floods. The channel is too narrow there. There's too many, I mean, our house butts up to that, so we see it. And they're not moving along at any rapid pace for the Hovian Homes. So if they do start building a bridge on Porter, that cuts off that exit. That means that those 1,000 cars are going to be coming out of Maricopa or out of Santa Rosa Springs to cross the railroad tracks to get out onto the highway. It is a problem, and I'm sure that nobody really addressed the traffic as how it is, because I've come up there. If you come when the kids are leaving for school, it's sometimes you've got to wait. There's a stop sign there, but there's no stop sign on Porter. So the cars just keep coming. Sometimes they'll let you in, sometimes they won't. And there's various times in the day when that is just a traffic nightmare. For those who have to get somewhere, it is. The one lady was saying it takes her 15 minutes for us to get out of town, to get clear over to John Wayne. It's at least 20 to 30 minutes, which is ridiculous. In a town that's only 4 square miles, the original town part was only 4 square miles. That should never be. I mean, that's the whole reason people move here. I understand apartments are necessary, but the high density of them, it's making us look very cheap on that end of town. Maybe they don't care, but for the residents in Santa Rosa Springs, I think we do care. And I would just like somebody to consider putting a hold on it there. Like I said, the school will never build there in that thing, is because it's by the railroad tracks. And there will be an accident one day. There'll be a train derail, or the wash will be running. You cannot get police, you can't get fire, and you can't get health in there. So what happens then? Who gets sued? If the last time the wash was running and the person couldn't get out, they couldn't get to an emergency room and they needed to. Thankfully, it wasn't horrible, but it could have been. So I'm just saying that you should maybe take a little more into consideration before you say, let's build some more apartments so that the coming out onto Porter will be, like I said, a traffic nightmare. Thank you.
Okay, next one, Marcy. Your name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Marcy Charette, 41891 West Lago Street. And I really don't have much to add. The speakers were so eloquent in stating the issues. My main concern was the traffic, and it's been substantially covered. But I know there's supposed to be 200 units, and it sounds like the traffic pattern that he stated is less than the commercial would be. But as it has also been stated, getting out of the subdivision at times is so difficult, or getting back in. And if you do catch a train, you're stuck forever. And if you have so many residents, if there's 388 parking spaces, you figure, okay, 200 cars leave that apartment complex. That's only half. It's only one person per apartment leaving. If you couple that with everyone leaving from Santa Rosa Springs, just to exit, it's just the difficulty factor, or getting back in when coming back. It's just, the traffic really can take a long time just on a normal day. So I just want to address that concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Wendy. And please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Wendy Garrett, 42191 West Palmyra Court in Glenwild. I've lived in this city now for just 5 years. I love this community. I volunteer all over town in various capacities. I think we do so many things right, but I do not think we need to have this many apartments all along the Porter Road corridor. I understand the need for rentals. We keep hearing again that we have teachers, law enforcement, seniors who need places to rent, but doesn't it all have to be along Porter Road? I walk my dog every morning around Pecana Park. I've just noticed that you've changed it from where you press the button to get the red light to a flashing red, and everybody's supposed to stop. A squad car was in the parking lot this morning watching people go right through it, so hopefully that will improve. But we have so many schools along the Porter Road corridor, and Porter Road is a main artery if you're going up Smith-Enke to get on the 347. Please refrain from changing the zoning in this from public, institutional to high density. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any more speaker cards. Anybody else like to address? Please approach the podium and state your name and your address for the record, please.
I'm Bill Lindsay. I'm 42448 West Paseo Drive in Santa Rosa Springs. Some of the things that we are hearing tonight, and I want to thank the guys from Roars. They've been real gentlemen. Now I'm going to step on them. Okay. Even though the East-West Parkway is not proposed to start for another year, and then it's going to take time to do that, and we're only supposed to worry about the traffic once the apartment complex is built. There's going to be construction vehicles going in and out before that. And again, as has been pointed out, we only have one access to our neighborhood, and that's off of Porter Road. Even after it's built, they're going to be crossing Iron Point, and they're also going to have an access and egress point on Iron Point Road. So that's one of the two that's required for the building. We're looking to complicate an already egregious problem by adding all of these units and the subsequent traffic that adds. I would like to see the apartment complex delayed until the traffic pattern can be improved to the point where it will not be so difficult for the residents. I realize that we're going to have those apartments. I mean, it's basically, no offense to you guys, it seems like a rubber stamp. And again, I understand that there's going to be all kinds of development along the MCGH, and these people are going to be going that direction. It's not going to be such a complication to get to the 347. And when Farrell Road is completed and becomes the Parkway, that will improve as well. So the apartment complex is going to happen. But can we delay the start of the construction until such time as the construction vehicles can access the building site and not come Porter Road from the MCGH, so that they would have to take Farrell and access the construction zone that way? And I think that's a big complication that nobody has addressed, is during the construction we're going to have all those construction vehicles in addition to all the other traffic that's currently going in and out of there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Hi there, I'm Susan Bonsante, 41266 West Carlisle Lane. Something that I keep hearing is that there have been community surveys done, and you've asked for community input. I think you can tell now that people are starting to take notice of the frenzied rezoning that seems to be occurring. And Glenwild has been specifically targeted, I guess, for lack of a better word. There's a lot, I think myself, I feel like we're not really heard. And how does that change? How is there more transparency so that the community can have some say and come here and not feel as though there is a rubber stamp on everything? Decisions are made, the staff is making recommendations. Where does that process start so that we can have some say in what's happening in our community and in our city? One of the things, you talk about an online survey and surveys that occurred back in 2018. I didn't even live here in 2018. I got here in 2019, and I love it. I love the small town. I love knowing my neighbors really well. I love the community I live in. But to have the talking points of, we did a survey at the Salsa Festival. That sounds like a lovely event. I haven't had the pleasure of going, but if I'd known there was going to be a survey there that would impact our entire community, I would have made a point of being there. So I guess my point is that there needs to be more outreach to the community. How do you make that happen? People are upset. I don't want to speak for everyone. That's a mistake. I'm speaking for myself and possibly some of the people in this room. But where does the process start? How can we be involved? How can we have more say in what's happening? I agree that we can't stop progress, and we've heard over and over we need 25% of our population or of our housing to be multifamily, apartments, rentals, things like that. That's inevitable. We understand that. But there is a huge concentration of it all in one area. And some of it's kind of ugly. You know, there's some things that have been approved that, you know, they're not very nice. So I think that myself, I would appreciate if there was some way that we could just have our voices heard on a more regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Okay, commissioners, true to fashion, let's start out on the internet. Commissioner LaFalle.
Thank you. I first wanted to commend staff as well as the applicant on the detailed information that was provided addressing all of the issues. I really appreciate that. My only question is on the transportation report where the numbers were presented, I just want to make sure that the consideration was taken into account for, even though the proposal is that the units are being built for residents who will be working within the city limits or not too far away in the Casa Grande area, so not driving out to the Phoenix metropolitan area, that still presents traffic. So I just want to make sure that that was taken into consideration in addition to the schools, the housing, and the issues that the current residents have presented in that report, in those numbers.
Chair Coggins, Commissioners, Commissioner LaFalle, the traffic impact study or traffic impact analysis does take into account many factors, including entitled developments, including existing conditions, future road improvements. It's quite a lot of information that goes into those studies.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was addressed or considered, excuse me.
Anything else, Commissioner LaFalle?
No, Chairperson, that was it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, I just wanted to, there was a couple comments about this slide, and I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that this isn't the cumulative, findings of the study. This is only the findings of the traffic counts created by this specific site. This does not include existing traffic. This slide only compares what the entitlement is today versus what we're proposing. The whole traffic study does account for what the commissioner asked for. I just wanted to make sure it was clear because it does look a little confusing on the slide with only 78 trips. That's only for our project.
We got it.
All right.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you, Chair Huggins. I find myself struggling as I listen to some of our neighbors address this body with their concerns, and there seems to be a common thread, and I too share some of those concerns. The primary concern that I have with changing the zoning here has to do with just the aggregation of apartments in this Porter Road corridor, as someone mentioned. I think that's a great adage for what this has become. It's become a corridor of apartment communities aggregated in one spot. And we had, in our last meeting, a DRP on a apartment community just north of the railroad tracks, and I had the same concern, but we were past the rezone. So this is where we can pump the brakes and say, let's let those other projects and products come online, reassess the traffic in real time, what it really feels like, as opposed to projections and rosy assessments and future realignments that may or may not happen, and actually see what happens in the community. So I appreciate what city staff was able to put together, talking about our need for additional multifamily in the community. I support that. I was a part of that study when we were examining what our housing needs was, and I support that we need additional multifamily. I don't see where we need it right here, right? I think city staff made an interesting and compelling case for why public institution and current CB zoning are incongruent. I think we as a body can change that. I just don't think we need to change it to multifamily or high density residential at this time. I do not think that promotes city growth in an orderly manner. And I don't think that it really protects our public health, safety, peace, comfort, and general welfare. I think that there are other things that we can do with that particular parcel. And again, high density residential at this time for traffic, privacy issues, for a myriad of issues that have been discussed here are some of the reasons why I'm inclined not to support this at this time. So I don't have any direct questions for staff. I think you guys did a great job of presenting a pretty tough case, but those are the only comments that I had, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Yoakum.
I drive these areas from time to time that the folks here tonight are talking about, and I can identify with the anguish and frustration that you're enjoying. Poor choice of words, I'm sure. Over the last 15 months or so, we have been looking at apartment complexes. We've been looking at developments. And in this particular area, there is an inordinate, in my opinion, there's an inordinate concentration of this type of development, which is adding to the traffic situation. I realize that we do our traffic studies, and I'm sure that all of the diverse information that we throw into coming up with our conclusions, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm a student of that. But when I look at this, we have a slowly growing but very intense crescendo developing as to how much are we going to develop, how many cars are we going to be putting in that area, and I think that this whole situation has to be revisited. Commissioner Irving has brought this particular issue up as far as traffic is concerned, again and again, and it just seems that each time we talk about it, there's more traffic piled on top of the concerns that we have. And I agree with Vice Chair Sharp and his comments that he made that this whole situation has to be looked at more closely. I really believe it has to be looked at more closely. I don't know that I'm saying I would disapprove this project only because we're using general plan guidelines, but I think if you look more deeply into the general plan, it also addresses these kind of issues for the better good of the community. So I think we really have to look at this. And also, I do want to make one comment since we allowed Mr. Klobb, I believe it is, to talk about DRP 22-02. I realize this is not the time or place to talk about it, but I paid very close attention to some of the comments that he made, and I'm going to be looking to see what staff does with those comments when we do address DRP 22-02. That's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you.
Irving.
Ted's right about the traffic. I think part of the problem, you addressed it about being transparent. I went to the city council meeting and I was so impressed. Everything you ask, they have. And my question was, well, why doesn't everybody know about this study? It was an in-depth study running from Casa Grande Highway all the way to Honeycutt. Looking at from different time frames and the usage. I did a very informal study for the last week and a half driving that. It became very clear. At 9 o'clock I think I counted 9 cars going one way and 10. The issue became clear to me of the peak hours. It has to do with the schools. I was thrilled today that at 11 o'clock, the chief of police, the assistant superintendent of schools, their safety committee met. And the issue I see is very clear. It has to be a joint session like that, including you, because when I drove those neighborhoods, kids are walking in the middle of the streets. They're not paying attention to anything. Parents are making illegal turns, and the chief has committed. My point being, you're right. I think what we need to do is show those studies clearly. Everything you just asked has already been done. The traffic patterns are very clear. The issue is enforcement. The issue, as I was so pleased that the charter schools were at this meeting, because they've got to be a part of the solution. We've talked to PTOs about this. I've seen parents drive over traffic cones with kids there. So, and I guess what I'm saying is, I think a couple things. One is we probably need to schedule regular meetings to address your issue, to let people know what's going on. We've got to include the schools. We've talked to the police volunteers if they could come out more. Like I said, we've asked the PTOs, could they come out more? Butterfield addressed theirs because the school agreed to hire safety officers. Every school should have that. So I guess my point is, a lot of the things you say, we need to figure out a way to let them know some of the stuff that's already going on. And we need to let them know that a lot of their comments are being addressed. I just don't think we let them know they are being addressed. And also a way to get them involved. So again, like I said, I was so encouraged to see that meeting today, and it's going to continue. And I would suggest you check and see if you can sit in on those. because, you know, the fact that the schools were there really made me feel good, because they're a large part of the problem with those kids. So again, all I'm saying is I think you are being heard, it's being passed around. Anybody, especially at my age, know how slow the bureaucracy works, and also that we don't tell you what's going on. Like, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I did not know that study had been done. Well, you were there. And it was impressive. It's like, why don't we know this stuff? So again, I guess I really, really want to encourage you. How can you get involved? Keep coming, keep getting on us, keep raising issues. We'll pass it on. Keep talking. You know, there's going to be 2 candidate forums coming up. And June 23rd, and I think July 7th, be there. That should be a question you ask every single candidate. So again, there are ways to get involved. We do need a better job. We talk about this constantly. Other than Facebook, there's no real way to communicate in this city. So I just think, you know, get involved, stay involved. Don't get discouraged, because I think people do listen and do hear, but you just go to school board meetings, go do all that stuff. You know, again, my point is you are being heard. I would ask, again, go to those forums and ask the city council candidates, what are they doing as far as safety in the Porter area? So, you know, don't quit. It's a multi-layered problem, but again, I believe all of us working together can at least cut it down somewhat.
Thank you. Commissioner Frank.
Yeah, and I agree with all that's been said here tonight, especially that this is becoming the apartment corridor, and I'm not sure what we can do about that. I do agree we need to spread it out, but that's hard for this body to dictate what happens on who builds where on what land, exactly. There's just, yeah. But could we look at the traffic count slide again for me, please? Yep, so, yeah, I'm a civil engineer, but I'm not a traffic guy, really. But how many units are we proposing on this development?
Commissioner Frank, 200 units.
Okay, so I don't know, I'm just having a hard time squaring in my mind that we're only generating 76 trips in peak hours, 76 and 78. I'm sure the tables and whatever show that, but
There is a little bit of discrepancy between the traffic impact study statement that was submitted for this project. The actual average daily trips is 1,088, which is not far off from the 908, but a little higher, with 68 a.m. peak hour trips and 86 p.m. peak hour trips.
No, this.
No, I know, that's just the difference of what's being proposed. But it just seems like a really low number to me. It's just kind of seems shockingly low. But
Because the land's not that, the area's not that big.
that's true too.
I think that's what's generating the lowness of it, is because what can you really put in there?
Right. So like I said, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I have to trust you guys on that. But one of the things that came up too, talking about traffic, is in your studies, and specifically the intersection coming out at Iron Point, do you know what the level of service is currently there? Or would you know that?
I do not know the answer to that.
Go to a map that shows Iron Point.
We do have a traffic engineer here. I would like to bring him up to
While he's
try to
doing-
answer your question, if I can, Commissioner Frank.
While he's doing that, could you bring up the map that shows the street so we can show Iron Point and everything?
The overhead site map. Come on, there it is. Here, let me take off some of the, take some of that off of there. There we go.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you. This particular development, because the trips are so low that are generated with it, it doesn't warrant even the analysis of the capacity at major intersections. So it really warrants what's called a traffic impact statement. It just looks at the trip generation, the surrounding areas, the roadway network, describes those and how this fits in with that, and that's really as far as it goes.
Yeah, that does make sense, I guess. So at what point, and maybe this is more a question for the city as a whole, I mean, we have to look at the warrants and everything. When are we going to get a signal or some kind of control mechanism at Iron Point? Maybe that's beyond the scope of this, but I am concerned, you know, for the residents
Right.
trying to get in and out of there, and it's already a challenge.
Correct. Let's keep in mind too, there is the east-west corridor that's starting construction, not next year, but next month, a couple of weeks, and the overpass. So I just wanted to emphasize that in order to get these improvements, to get the 4 lanes, to get the overpass over the wash, to get the east-west corridor, developments like this come in and they help pay for all of those improvements. So I would like to defer to Rodolfo, though, on the timing. I think he might have an answer for us. Rodolfo Lopez, Director.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Joanne Miller, if you're somewhere in there. If anything, back when Santa Rosa Springs development, again, which is not associated with this project itself, there was a condition placed for a potential traffic signal improvement for the intersection of Porter Road and Iron Point Road itself, which that was paid through Elliott Holmes, the builder, and that's something that we could look to see where that's at in the works in terms of getting a traffic signal somewhat warranted for there. But we know that back in 2000, I think it was 2015, when the PD amendment for that subdivision came about, that this commission and council conditioned contribution for a traffic signal component as well. So if anything, there is at least an idea to make some improvements to that, along as what Byron mentioned, east-west corridor, that is fully somewhat funded, and if it wasn't mentioned already, that is starting construction after Memorial Day itself, and that includes the improvement of a dry crossing bridge over the wash and the improvement along Farrell Road for a four-lane road, or actually a parkway road, and also what was mentioned earlier for the second access point for the existing subdivision, parcel 4 is under construction as we speak as well. And a lot of those projects are happening as we speak, which you can expect at least a 12-month plus construction timeline, where such as this project, if it goes to the proper process and channels, we're looking at a year plus out. So concurrently, all these things are happening to make improvements to the area to justify of all these development activity that's happening in the area.
Okay, Rudy, you addressed, I think, part of my other question was just the emergency services access to here.
Right.
So this development is a year to 18 months out?
I mean, what we're seeing for general construction timelines for other projects, I mean, we're barely still talking entitlements today. We're starting on east-west corridor after Memorial Day itself, so it could time up that we'll be complete for east-west corridor project right before this improvement will start occupancy itself, theoretically.
Okay. Yeah.
They said a year out before the developer said a year out before they even start building.
Right. So I just want to make sure we're going to have that bridge access before this comes online.
Yeah.
That would be critical, otherwise we don't have proper fire access.
That's correct.
Is phase 4 of Santa Rosa Springs access point on Porter or Farrell?
Farrell,
That's
Madam
what I
Chair,
thought.
Commissioner.
So that's not even affecting, the base building of Santa Rosa Springs is more affected on Farrell than it is Porter.
But again, it also has a connection, if you look on that map, to Iron Point as it's a wet crossing, but it's something that the city has already approved, that type of design from, a commitment of that design feature. It is a better design than what we're seeing over at Rancho Dorado Parkway. It still allowed the general nuisance waters as a floodway, but it's a lot better design than we're seeing there, so.
But the construction traffic for phase 4 is coming off of Farrell, not off of Porter,
Construction traffic?
or phase 4 building.
Yeah, all the construction traffic will be off of Farrell, yeah.
That alleviates the traffic on Porter.
Yeah. And Madam Commissioners, Madam Chair and Commissioners, just want to reiterate again, the concern that I'm hearing outside from what the planners have done analysis, again, is the traffic concerns. You know, what staff is illustrating here tonight is truly, if the concern for the public is traffic itself, leaving it by right. I know we have a general plan land use of public institutional, but currently it is zoned as commercial itself. So it is commercial zone, and a property owner has every right to develop it as a commercial use itself, which back then, we saw this plan about 12 years ago that showed retail center commercial itself. If we're to develop as is, property owner has every right to develop that. And what you're seeing out here is that commercial type use will generate, you know, somewhat 3 times or 4 times more traffic than what we're seeing on the multifamily. So we do consider this from staff, the city, a true down zone of the intensity itself compared to what's allowed by right today. So just want to make sure that we all understand that. Thank you.
No, I think I'm done. I guess the one thing is like, okay, maybe it's time we need to reassess the housing needs assessment study. We're getting an awful lot of apartments. I know we keep beating the drum that we're providing places for teachers and policemen to live, but man, can't we house every teacher and policeman that we currently have with all these apartments that we currently have entitled? It seems like we're getting to that point. I know the workforce housing and everything else, but I don't know. And maybe, like I said, I don't want to get into it too much now, but something for us to consider.
Back to the slide on the.
I think Commissioner Frank makes an excellent point. I think that for me, that the traffic issue is it's a concern, but it's a lesser concern with just the aggregation of apartments in this particular area, right? I think I just come back to, you know, just again, why are we concentrating all of our apartment needs right here in this area? And I think that's the strongest issue that I have. I think the traffic issues with the east-west corridor realignment, I mean, that'll help alleviate traffic, but it still doesn't change the fact that now we're aggregating more and more apartments in one area of our city. And if there's a way we could spread that out, I think that would just make more sense.
Vice Chair Sharp, if I could speak to that. I think you are seeing a great concentration of multi-story residential, multifamily in this area, but let's keep in mind we have a lot of entitled development, multifamily development on the west side of the city as well. Bungalows on Bolin, we have the Hampton Edison product as well. We have the flats at Maricopa Flats, the Fuse 520 Flats, 520 used to be Fuse 520. We have Innovation Villas that's over there as well. So I keep hearing about this Porter Road corridor, but I think we have to keep in mind where the general plan and where zoning allows such developments versus where there's already existing single-family residential and/or commercial buildings. And you look at the availability of land, and I believe it is. I mean, if you count up the total units, it's probably very well balanced with what we have coming into the city.
If you can go back to that slide on the number of.
Which one?
Number of housing for apartment complexes of where we're at, or excuse me, apartment complex. Number of housings for the apartment complex. Talk tonight.
For this particular one?
Total. Where we're at today.
Not this slide. Okay.
The derivation of how the.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, right there.
This one right here, sorry.
So does this slide here, because it says right here, city housing inventory of the multifamily residential units is 2135 entitled with 670 units completed. Now I get the fact that 670 are done. Is that 2,135 including this 200 units, or is that without this 200 units?
You know, I believe this was created for the homes at Maricopa, which was just seen at City Council, so I do not believe this includes the 200 that we're talking about.
Basically 2,300 then.
Yep.
Of the 6,200 that we need, so we're still lacking 4,000 units.
6,400 then, yep.
Yeah. I want to make sure you were done. Okay, great. I've got a couple of points that I've been taking copious notes, and I want to thank everybody for speaking. I appreciate all your concerns and everything. And to Byron's point, yes, this may seem like this is the apartment corridor, and it does feel that way because it's only been this last few submittals that have come in front of us that have been in this exact corridor. But to his point, we've seen it all over the city. The northeast, or excuse me, northwest side is going to have a lot. They've got that big subdivision that's coming in that's going to have multifamilies in there as well, because that's zoned that way as well. The fuse behind Acacia, that's already in the works right now. That's being built. We have the bungalows on Boland. That's going to be built. It seems like a concentration on Porter, because that's what we've been talking about the last few meetings, but it is all over town. To this particular facility or submittal that we're looking at, I'm taking back a little bit on looking at what is the best use for this particular land. And again, to Rudy's point, by right, the developer could indeed turn it into commercial. We think that there's traffic now. The commercial you saw on that one slide would make it even worse, which runs the risk of more accidents at the railroad tracks and until that light gets done, because they could build it tomorrow. It don't take long to throw up a small little strip mall. Then I look at, if that happens, how long is that going to stay there developed with Walmart across the street, with all the other stuff that's coming across the street? If I had my druthers of going to a little strip mall or Walmart, I'm going to go to Walmart because it's cheaper. Honest. Throw me under the bus for that, but I'm being honest. So what's the best use for that? We could do exactly what one of the constituents said and make it a city park. Where's that money going to come from? Pocketbooks. With this particular development, we're not paying anything. We're actually getting money from them for impact fees and whatnot. So where's that money going to come from? We've already got one that's being developed down in Rancho Mirage area, or I'm sorry, where's that one that's down in Homestead area? There's another park being built online that I saw somewhere. Yes, thank you, at the lakes. I knew we had one built. So we've got another lake coming on, or we've got another city park environment coming on board. So when would this one, if we turn that into that, where would we have the money for that, and when would that become available? Then the builders look at it by right again. Throw commercial in there. With having a 200 unit, our traffic is actually restricted downward versus what it could be if we put in commercial there. This helps bridge the gap of what we need. The thing that I'm toying with is the fact that we want to gain a lot more industrial, a lot more commercial, a lot more revenue into our city. We've got a lot of a lot of industrial that's coming on board over in Casa Grande. Lucid Motors has just announced that they're going to be building over there again. People can work here, live here and work there. It's a lot easier commute. I just think that we're able to keep more people here if we actually have affordable housing. People are not going to come into Maricopa, like it's been said, just to rent an apartment complex. I'm going to play off of what Commissioner Irving was saying about the education of the public. That's, for me, I don't care what we put there. It could be SpaceX, I don't care. The problem that we're having in this town is the traffic and the inability of people paying attention to the traffic laws. People, I almost got hit coming here. People are not paying attention. They're, like he said, running red lights. They're running over cones for school districts. We need to educate our people. And I think that's where we can do the best good. And I'm super glad to hear that that meeting occurred, because unfortunately, I couldn't attend in person the city council meeting, but I was online listening and watching it. So I'm glad to hear that that was something that the council members were screaming for, that they're actually starting to do, and I'm really happy to hear that. And I think that's where we really need to focus our time and our efforts is on the education. Because at the end of the day, we look at the avenue of postponing this, denying this. We have to look at, be careful of what you wish for, because the developer has it by right. And next thing you know, we could have a 3-story resident or commercial building pop up there. Storage unit. Yeah, we can have another storage unit.
The site's too small for a school.
It definitely is too small for a school. No, that's not going to happen. So I think I said my piece. Thank you very much. I think that we are definitely still lacking, and this helps bridge the gap a little bit. I do have some issues with the development of it, of the stuff that we're seeing here that, you know, I know it's not the right time and the right place for this conversation, but I'll just put it out there right now for the developer. I'm already looking at the number of refuge containers. 1 for the entire complex is not enough. So you might want to take that in consideration, because that's going to become a pet peeve of mine if this goes through. With that being said, I don't think I have anything more. Any other comments from the commissioner?
I would like
If this were to move ahead, I'd like to see, I believe it's buildings 3 and buildings 4 that abut the western side of the property. Is it possible that those could be turned so that they are not like the entire side? I understand you went through sight lines and things like that for privacy, but could you look at possibly turning those buildings that way the broad side of the building isn't facing the western adjacent homes, so that sight lines aren't even a concern or an issue? I mean, that's just, again, that's more DRP. That's for a different thing. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for the developer.
So noted. I appreciate the comment. Action?
I'd like to make are we going to consider GPA 2108 and zoning 2108 together or separately?
Separate.
Separately? I'd like to make a
Agendized
motion.
separately.
I'd like to make a motion that we do pass GPA 2108.
All right, I have a motion to approve GPA 21-08. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you. So moved. All right, ZON 21-08, public hearing, a request by Grave Davis of iPlan Consulting on behalf of Rowers Companies to rezone approximately 10 acres of existing general business CB2 to high-density residential RH located at the southwest corner of Porter Road and Iron Point Road, just south of Maricopa, Casa Grande Highway. Discussion and action. I don't think you need to give another presentation. He's like, no. But I do have to open up the public hearing. Is there any other people, comments, concerns that anybody would like to say on this? Approach the podium. Come on up. You can come on up and state your name and address again for the record. Sorry, it's another public hearing. If I don't do it by the law, the Mr. Attorney over here is going to get mad at me.
Once again, I'm Marcy Charette, 41891 West Lago Street, Santa Rosa Springs. This is just kind of about the whole cumulative conversation of all the apartments and, you know, that you were noting all, you need to meet this goal. But I'm just wondering about the water goal. I don't know how the water operates. Like someone else, I've only been here since 2000, well, close to 2019. So I also didn't know about all this going on. But with everyone coming in and all these apartments and all this building up, do they have a water plan? Because I've heard also there's supposed to be a surf park coming in, and then with all these apartments and all these homes and all the surf park, and then you hear that they might restrict water. So I'm thinking, well, they're going to restrict, why are we building all this? So I really don't know what's going on with regard to that, but since it was pointed out, the plan, I just thought I'd throw it out there for the record, so just wondering.
I'm not hearing her.
If there is a plan. What?
She's speaking of the water issues, of why, with everything coming, the surf park coming and the other apartment complexes coming, is there the concern for water been addressed?
Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, I would just point out that with respect, the applicant has produced an assured water supply from Global Water, so we do have that on record.
I did notice it was part of the information. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Dustin Williams, 42115 West Arvada Court. I would like to just echo the sentiment of Vice Chair Michael on pumping the brakes. I've heard a lot of hypotheticals tonight, a lot of projections, and while those are important for city planning, I totally understand it. I also understand that high density is needed. There's a lot of things from a infrastructure standpoint that we don't see happening. And I love the idea of having more conversations with the community and education. I think those are all great ideas. But what I see a lot of here in Maricopa is I see a lot of building and then a lot of catch-up for the infrastructure. And so while this particular building site does have some challenges from an infrastructure standpoint, I'd like to just propose to the chair and the commissioners that this is a good pump the brakes moment and that your community will thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else like to speak during the public hearing? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing.
Yeah, I just had a comment. Go ahead. Thank you. I guess I just want to remind us all, this is a zoning issue. So if we don't change the zoning, it's, you know, I think it'll make it worse, really, as far as traffic is concerned. So I think, again, putting the brakes on is fine, but it's still zoned, and it's going to be zoned one way or the other. So I couldn't agree more. We need to look at the traffic, but right now we're being asked to change the zoning, and I don't see how changing the zoning is going to hurt the issue, because I think, again, and people have to remember, you know, people say, why don't we? We don't own the land. We're not developers. So whoever owns the land, and if we don't rezone it, that's not, to me, going to change. They'll never put a school there. The site's too small. If the developers then have to go in and say you can only do commercial, then that's what they'll put in. So I just want everybody to realize all we're talking about now is changing the zoning and what's more appropriate. We went through this before when we approved the other site there, and we all realized, well, what else are going to put there? And the issue is, if we don't put anything there, then we lose all that money. So, I mean, I understand what you're talking about, but to me, the issues are we change it, and we know somebody's going to develop it. We don't change it, and it could be commercial, or they don't do anything with it. But again, it's still going to be zoned one way. So I think, to me, putting the brakes has got nothing to do with the zoning. It just simply means that, you know.
And I'll go back to exactly what I said earlier. It's by right, so if we don't change the zoning,
They can do what they want with it.
they can really, it's them left commercial, or they can build commercial, at least if we change the zoning to the requested high-density residential, that's all that's going to be able to ever go in there. So it actually benefits us to change the zoning.
And at that point, when it comes to that, then we can't look and see about the brakes, like the design of it, like he brought up before. So I think to me at least, by changing it, we know we've got a developer, we know it's just the first step, we know they've got to go to the next step, and then we can look at what Michael suggested, change the buildings around. It doesn't look right. The colors need to be changed. All the things you brought up about the other side. Then it could all be looked at, is it compatible? But I'm just worried if we don't change the zoning, we can't do any of that.
I respectfully disagree. And the reason I say that is because it is precisely the zoning change that will enable the developer to build once we make the change. This particular, exactly, right, but allow me to finish briefly. What I'm saying is currently it is sitting vacant and has been vacant, and it has been commercial. If there was a commercial opportunity that was chomping at the bit, it would have been done already. And I think the change to go to high-density residential is because the economic opportunity is present. And I'm not denying that. I suppose what I'm saying is if we just hold off, pump the brakes until we get these other ones online on Porter Road so that we can assess how the aggregation of apartments in that area is impacting traffic, and then the needs around traffic and infrastructure are assessed, then we can revisit this issue, right? Then we can revisit, hey, do we go ahead and grant the zoning request to residential? So this notion that something's going to spring up because it's already commercial, it would have been done 5, 10, 15 years ago. It hasn't been. So this is exactly where we want to go ahead and press the brakes and say, well, let's just hold off for a second.
I'm going to let you handle this one, Rick. It's not zoned commercial right now. It's zoned, public use.
No, ma'am.
Well, that was the general plan.
Madam Chair, that's
Zone-
the general plan designation. The current zoning on the property is commercial.
Oh, currently it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
And I'd also,
CB2, I believe.
Chair Huggins, I'd also like to point out that the current general plan that you just voted on designation is high-density residential. You guys just approved that. So
Right.
now we're talking about the zoning. The only thing that the high-density residential GPA designation supports would be high-density residential. Just wanted to point that out.
So if the two have to go together, then why not just have one submittal? I guess I'm just a little frustrated. If there's two separate items, I understand one's a GPA and one's zoning. But if you're saying that one has to go with the other, I mean, why not just submit them together? But
I would move approval of Zone 2108.
okay, I do have a motion to approve ZON 21-08. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
opposed?
Okay, thank you. So moved. All right, the reports from commission and or staff. Rick's like, wait, I got some stuff I gotta say.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, just one thing to address this evening. Just would like to point out that we do have items in there, and we're planning on a meeting on the 13th of next month. We've got a full agenda, so there will be 2 scheduled meetings next month. And the only other thing that I would add is, please have a safe and enjoyable weekend out there. Enjoy your holiday, and we look forward to seeing you back here on the 13th.
Rudy's in the wings.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, if I may, I think tonight's meeting was very democratic process. I'd like to see that. That's great. So I appreciate what you guys have done as commissioners. The one thing I just want to continue to add and mention that what Commissioner Irving saw staff earlier at City Hall, that we are having conversations regarding school traffic. As the city manager has mentioned at the previous meetings, those conversations are happening in the back scene. We've been meeting with the schools for the past 4 months on that, and we're looking at action plans, working with the schools over the summer and implementing that next school year. So just let you know, for the residents as well, that is happening to mitigate the concerns of traffic within the city when it comes to traffic on major roadways itself. So that's all I have to say. Just update on that's happening as we speak.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you. I know that this was probably before your time, but we had asked that, I know that there's anything that's less than 5,000 square feet can be house, does not come in front of the commission. But we had asked that even though it doesn't have to come for approval to us, that we receive information on that. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. The reason being is because as members of the commission, we tend to get stopped frequently and asked, well, hey, do you know about such and such? And we're like, unless we've been able to spend a few minutes digging through the websites, we don't necessarily really know. So we'd just like to be kept in the know, so to speak. So, and I don't want to throw you under the bus because I know you're new, so. But it was a request in the past, and I'd just like to reiterate that past.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me.
No, not Nick. Just because he was out sick last time.
Madam Chair, Commission members, duly noted, I'll touch base with Rudy and we'll move forward accordingly.
He's over there shaking his head. He remembers. I think we kind of beat him up and I can't even remember his name now. I'm sorry. Who's the guy that just left? Yes, that's who it was. Corn was supposed to be providing this, so. Yeah, if we can have that, that would be great. Thank you. All right, guys. Executive session. I see Nick shaking his head no, so we all get to go home. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion, second? Second. In a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. And thank you.